Gallant Warriors. It had been some time when Ishia and the Zixes saw the last Mal crossed the tundra and entered the woods of the rainforest. Navi rushed towards Ishia. He found something. The Mal Servius are on their way to here now. Where are they? At the slopes of the hills back there. They are many, 1,000 maybe. Have courage. We can take them all. Ishia looked at Harbus and the Mals. He then felt the direction of the wind. It was moving eastwards. Harbus, we will meet the enemies first in these woods and we will let them to where we can inflict great damage to their force. I want you and the others to take positions on the trees in the rainforest back there. Tell them to go as high as they can and at my command, I want them all to release their arrows to the sky in the direction where we are but slanting slightly towards the west. Just fire in the sky. But we want to fight, Yoma interrupted. Ishia looked at the small and young warrior. He gave up a smile. Of course you will fight. We will let the Mal Servius outside in the open where you can shoot them well, not in these woods. We will flank them on both sides. Do you understand, Yoma? Harbus and the young warriors nodded. Go and watch for my signal. The Mals ran crossing the open tundra leading to the woods of the rainforest. When Ishia saw them disappear into the woods, he then ordered the Zixes to take positions. They broke up into 3 groups. Navi and the others moved to the west while Ishia's group went to the east. The other group was plainly waiting on the ground on the path of the Mal Servius. They were the baits that would let the Mal Servius outside the woods to the tundra. Soon, they heard the rumbling of branches and leaves as several hundred foots echoed inside the woods. Slowly, the Mal Servius emerged one by one from the hills not far from them. They were carrying longer arms and complete with body armors from helmets to vests and shields. Pampi was leading them. The Zixes began to prepare at the sight of dark bodies that were slowly moving towards where they were hiding. They were hidden by the woods and dead logs scattered on the ground while some were on top of the trees. When the Mal Servius passed the group of Navi, Ishia gave the order to the Zixes serving as baits to attack. The Zixes rose on the ground almost in front of the first line of Mal Servius as they released their arrows and daggers towards the stunned Mal Servius in front. The first shots made through and 40 Mal Servius fell instantly to the ground. Then, arrows flew from afar hitting other Mal Servius from behind. They couldn't respond but to protect themselves as others raised their shields. The baits fired once more, but this time, several shields were raised that the second wave of arrows didn't do much damage as the first. Just as when the Mal Servius readied their own archers to retaliate, the Zixes backed off and ran fast inside the woods as other Zixes at the back fired at the advancing few, protecting the baits as they flee. Then, the baits positioned to protect their protectors and the 2 groups changed places to protect each other as they fled towards the edges of the woods. They had done damage as more than 100 Mal Servius fell dead with their wooden sticks made by the Mals. They were slowing down the enemy from advancing and even the Mal Servia archers could not fire well their arrows for the Zixes were good in covering themselves using the trees. This made Pampi frustrated as he ordered the thick line of Mal Servius in front to chase the enemy as another big group of Mal Servius detached from their formation and fired hundreds of arrows at the woods in every direction hoping that it would land at the bodies of the unseen and well-hidden Zixes. When the baits saw the thick line of advancing enemies, they all ran fast exiting the woods crossing the open tundra and disappeared inside the rainforest. Don't let them get away, Pampi ordered. Ishia and the other Zixes were hidden and waiting at the edge of the woods as the first group of Mal Servius passed them. Ishia and the Zixes were stunned at the many dark bodies that began crossing the tundra to the rainforest. They were more than 1,000. When the last of the Mal Servius passed the hidden Zixes and were all in the midst of the open tundra, Ishia signaled the Mals at the top of the trees in the edges of the rainforest by releasing a lit arrow to the sky as they attacked the Mal Servius from behind. Moments later, Pampi and the Mal Servius who were out in the open land saw the sky filled with hundreds of arrows coming out from the rainforest. Simultaneously, the Zixes and Ishia attacked the Mal Servius shooting at their backs with the straight and better arrows made by the Mals. Each shot was hitting a dark body and Pampi's force was depleting fast from many arrows that were flying from the sky and from the woods where they just came from. The Zixes and the Mals had surrounded Pampi's army who became confused at the sight of the arrows coming from the trees and from behind them. They couldn't see where their attackers were but only the deadly sticks that were hitting their bodies. It was not stopping as the Zixes who served as baits emerged from the woods and fired their arrows directly up front. Out from nowhere, familiar birds were flying in the open tundra emerging from the eastern woods and heading towards the Mal Servius that were caught in the middle of the tundra. Behind them were several thousand Mal Servius, the guards of the north. The Zixes were stunned at the sight of the number of Mal Servius that emerged from the far end of the woods in the east and everybody was moving to the tundra towards where Pampi's army was while some entered the woods of the rainforest. The Mal Servius loaded their trebuchets and fired at the direction where the blue birds flew in circles together with 1,000 of their archers. Suddenly, the skies were filled with burning balls and dark sticks heading to the woods on both sides as the guards from the north continued their advance separating into 2 large groups. One was heading towards their trapped soldiers while the others entered the rainforest in the east. They would enclose the resistance from the rainforest. The blue falcons served as the eyes of the Malservius. They flew in circles to where the Zixes and the Mals were. In a few moments, the Zixes went for cover as the burning missiles started to come to them, and so were the dark arrows. A few Zixes were hit and their hold of the advancing enemies that were chasing the Mals was breaking. At the other side of the tundra, at the edges of the rainforest, the first balls of fire and hundreds of sticks hit the forest trees. The view of the east was blocked by the high woods of the rainforest, and Harbus together with the Mals were oblivious of the missiles in the sky heading in their direction. They were all busy firing their arrows towards the tundra where the Malservius were. Yoma was being helped out by Rudy, who was handing him the sticks that he was firing into the sky. The friends and the young Mals were enjoying seeing the sticks flew as if those were toys that they released in the air, and some were still giving thumbs up whenever their arrows landed at the enemies. They were unprepared for the large army that was flanking them in the east, and they barely saw the Zixes with them on the ground, who were gallantly holding the advancing army of Malservius in the tundra. The waves of death from the sky in the east started to hit the trees of the rainforest. Some of the young Mals were thrown off from the impact of the large balls of fire that exploded, releasing fragments of burning fibers hitting them one by one. Their faces changed from smiles to fear, and confusion started to reflect onto their stares seeing their friends lose life from the dark sticks that too began hitting the trees and their bodies. The young and new warrior Mals were not used to war, and such scenes were traumatic, seeing their kind die one by one from the fires that were engulfing their bodies to the Mals falling off from the trees from the dark sticks. The first wave almost killed half of them instantly, and the second wave was even more severe as some of the high trees broke apart, crashing onto the trees where some of them were. Harbus watched at the dead and dying Mals at the ground and did not notice that a large ball of flame headed towards his tree. It was too late as his eyes glanced at the sight of an orange and burning ball in front of him. Ozil Benegs. The time has come. Give your life. Die for the Mals. The words of Ishia made the losing faith of the Zixes come back. While under the cover of the trees from the fires of the enemies in the east, they emerged and fired their remaining arrows towards the Malservius that had now turned their bodies towards them. They ignored the danger coming from the sky as they advanced towards the enemies. Though each knew they wouldn't stand a chance, their will and sacrifice were prevailing. They intended to do as much damage as they could, even though each knew that the remaining weapons they had and their remaining numbers were not enough to even inflict much damage against the forces that were chasing the mythical race that they decided to defend with their lives. When their last arrows were consumed, they ran out from the woods to the tundra where Pampi's forces had prepared. Ishia was leading the less than remaining 50 Zixes. His face revealed greatness and pride as he took out the daggers of his forefathers from his sides. The Malservius were stunned at the valor of the approaching Zixes as Pampi ordered his spearmen and crossbow shooters to take aim. When the Zixes were in the Malservius striking distance, Pampi gave the order to release their hold. Far inside the rainforest, Ginkgo and the elders were staring at the empty space of the woods where they had just passed. They could hear the sounds of death pounding the woods behind until moments later smoke seeped inside the woods. They knew that the Malservius succeeded in breaking the few that were holding them for getting into them. Their eyes were filled with tears and fear as they thought that sooner or later, they would face the murderers of their warriors. Ginkgo's face was much more scared than when they were running away from the Redths then. There was no one anymore that would hold the enemy as they were left onto themselves, but this time, against those who they lived with for years.